Hardy har, it's me again, the Bargain Pirate, and welcome to an all-new adventure in Game Chasing Yar. And last week was the CCJVQ, which is le Club des collectionneurs de jeux vidéo du Québec, or the Quebecer Video Game Collector Club. Anyways, it was a fun meet and greet with a lot of friends, a lot of people we haven't seen in a while, well, since the last one really, and I got some games there, so let's find out which games I've got.
First up, we have Lethal Weapon for the Super Nintendo. This copy is clean and nice, but the game itself is, well, anything but, as you'll see. It is the kind of game that feels a lot like one of those Amiga games because, well, I suppose it was. It's one of those licensed British games based on American pop culture, kind of like Ocean Software's other games, such as RoboCop and Batman, which was some of the good ones for Amiga, but this is kind of weird. Remember when Riggs had to fight crocodiles in the sewers? Not really. I think I remember a crocodile being in the Schwarzenegger film Eraser, but not sewers. So yeah, you have like 4 levels. They're all kind of where the hell do I go kind of levels. You know, like level 3 here has this stupid vent that keeps bringing you back to the beginning, and it's almost impossible to avoid. Level 4 here is well, more of the same, and it's not, the controls are floaty, it's, the hitboxes are unfair, the game is not the best. Also, if you want to play as Murtaugh, Danny Glover's character, you have to die as the Riggs Mel Gibson character. You'd think a simple character select would do it, but no. Up next, another movie tie-in, Demolition Man, and this copy is a little worse for wear. It's got some tearing on the label and some bubbling, and in the back label is also pretty bad, and there's some engraving in the back. But Demolition Man, aka the times we live in, where anything deemed offensive is against the law. I'm just being a boomer here, but this was one of my favorite 90s movies. I love, it's like speculative science fiction mixed with dumb Stallone action, so that's pretty cool. And the game is actually pretty good. After playing Lethal Weapon, I thought Demolition Man was actually a really good representation of the film. It had some cool contextual stuff, like here you have your main character jumping away from explosions, then he wakes up in the lab in the future, so you got some True Lies style isometric levels, kind of like Die Hard for the NES. So yeah, there's a good variety in terms of levels. Of course, the enemies are cheap and stuff, and you have the usual pitfalls of licensed games, like one-hit kill pitfalls, literally. Like if this pitfall here, you'll see where it keeps killing me if I even touch it. And then there's also these points of like, where the hell do I go kind of level designs that are classic for this type of game. But yeah. It's overall, I did like the experience, the visuals, the soundtrack. Everything feels like the movie, or like if I were a kid in the 90s, I'd be like, yeah, this is good for the movie. Up next, we have Lester the Unlikely, and this is a really clean copy. And the whole point of this game is to sort of simulate a platformer, but what if you were like a real regular nerd character, or not even a character, like if you were a real life nerd. You get fall damage from like any fall from more than 1.5 meters, so you have to sort of take your time and sort of yeah, so if you fall too high, like here, you lose health, so you have to sort of like shimmy and make your way really slowly to like pitfalls and such. It's really a unique concept that I'm really surprised it hasn't been explored in other mainstream consoles since. But the game is sort of a fun like puzzle game more than an actual platformer, so I think that's where the trick is. However, there's some really big frustrations, like sometimes some of the pits are really easy to fall into, and of course there's these damn eagles, or seagulls rather, that take you back to the beginning of the level. Then we have the very first Samurai Showdown, which is also known as Samurai Spirits in Japan. Samurai Showdown is, of course, a 1v1 fighting game where you can play 2 players, or you can play against the computer. And it's got characters based on, instead of being martial artists, they are more weapon-based martial artists, of course. And you have characters from all over times past, like feudal times. You have your your typical Yojimbo samurai. You have a Texan that wields a sickle and chain, and of course you have a lady knight from the medieval times. So yeah, no, the game is pretty fun. You have your usual mirror matches, bonus rounds, and all that. And the storyline's actually pretty decent. They have like cutscenes and stuff, but the English translations are really funny. The Dark Guy, that always made me laugh. Then you have Super C, which is not the best grocery store around here, but actually Super Contra, which is based directly on the Contra sequel that was in arcades. But like the NES Contra versus arcade Contra is better than the arcade version. Is it as good as Contra? Some people prefer Contra, some people prefer this one, but Super C is still a really quick-paced run and gun game that really puts your reflexes to the test here. And it is, it doesn't have, the Konami code, for example, is not exactly the same and only gives you 10 lives instead of 30, so it has a level of difficulty that the previous game did not. But it is fast-paced action. It is back when Konami gave a damn. It's a really good game, and if you don't want to play the first Contra again, this is the next best thing on the system. So yeah, no, it's a really good game, and of course, as always, you have to get that spread gun because that's the key to victory in Contra. But of course, speaking of Contra on the NES, I also have Contra Force, a really pricey one. The label here is a bit ripped. That's okay. The copy is not in the best of conditions, a little bit yellowed in the back, but it's a little bit of dirt here. But it's overall, I'm really happy to have this one in my collection. It's one of the pricier games in my NES collection, which is only now starting to be bigger. And we have player select. You can select your characters. This feels more like a more fluid kind of like RoboCop for the NES, or maybe not RoboCop, but it feels like I think it feels more like a Ninja Gaiden than a Contra. I mean, it's got some elements of Contra, it's got some familiar enemies, it's got some familiar concepts, and of course you get touched, you get killed, and you have a number of lives, so that's what it's got going for it in terms of being Contra game. But it's probably the black sheep of the series, even considering further games that stray from the main formula. This is still one of the ones that is it's not the ones that is the most fondly remembered in the series, but it's a fun addition to my collection, being one of the pricier games on the system, and also being probably the most expensive Contra game of these era. And then now I have a box for my Zombies Ate My Neighbors copy, which was pretty cool to have. I'm really happy with this. It came with a manual and all of the inserts. I love old paperwork from that time. Like, you got a card to redeem some free games here. That's pretty cool. And of course, you have an ad for Nintendo Power, which features a Nintendo Power I showed last time. So yeah, and I already had the game in my collection. So yeah, let's see what the game's all about. So Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Yeah, you can choose Julie or Zeke, and then you can go around saving your neighborhood from zombies and other assorted film-based monsters. It's got a very 1950s tongue-in-cheek Americana vibe to it. One thing I always do is you press one of the shoulder buttons to bring up your radar that shows you where where the neighbors to save are, and I don't know why this isn't like just standard. You have to like activate it, so if you're playing the game blind, it can be a lot tougher than if you at least have a good idea of where to go. It features several different locales, like all the fun horror stuff, like you got your hedge mazes from The Shining, with the Jason with the chainsaws, you got a mummy's tomb, you got a shopping mall, you got of course you have the neighborhood, and a lot of contextual stuff too, like you can use a fire extinguisher to take off a fire, and then you can go through the fireplace to reveal a secret hidden path and stuff. You can use a lawnmower to take care of the evil plants. You can also open cabinets. The game has actually a lot of in-depth stuff that you can or not need to partake in. You can also turn into a monster, and using your strength, you can open paths that you could with a bazooka. And this has a password system, not a save system. And of course, it's being a Konami game from the SNES era, is hard as balls, but still, it's a pretty cool thing to have in my collection, so I'll put it in a little tray. You put the manuals under the tray, that's where they go, never on top, because you can get it ripped, and then you slowly put that in the box, which is really nice. Has sharp corners like we love them. It's really clean and stuff. And then we put that in the plastic protector case so that it stays nice and smooth forever.
Now, in a rare moment, we have 2 games that are the creme de la creme this week. Of course, I'm talking about Contra Force, which is very pricey on its own, and the box and everything for my Zombies Ate My Neighbors. They're about the same in price if you don't count the game from Zombies. Contra being a little bit pricier than the box and manual for this. But now I have 2 awesome games in my collection, and that's always good. Yar. So join me next week for another fun-filled episode of Adventures in Game Chasing. Yar.